All right, I guess I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming to Sow, Grow, and Learn with the library. I will be, for the most part, highlighting a number of our books, but I will give you a preview of what we've got in the kits. This time we have jute, twine, and dowels for trellising. We have, by popular demand, a actual saucer this time, and that's 10 inches square. So you should be able to use it for quite a lot of different things as needed. We're moving to egg flats, although there will be some kits with the former supplies. We have our starter soil. We've got the various seeds. We've got quite a variety of seeds this time, partly because with the weather being what it is, there was some question as to what would be best to put in. So with great optimism, we did include peas. Those you'll want to plant pretty much ASAP. The Extension Service says that the latest recommended Northern Illinois planting date for the peas is May 15th. It just depends if we get more weather like we've had this week. They may decide there's a bit too much going on. We've got Swiss chard again, bright lights, so you get lots of color. We've got thyme, cumin, arugula, Greek oregano, nasturtium, the Empress of India variety, so it's a bright red flower, chives, sweet alyssum, the sugar and pea, flat leaf parsley, which may or may not grow. That one has a really long germination period. Phlox, which is a Drummondii mix, so it should come in a variety of colors. And we've got Masai bush beans. So those are a green bean varietal, as well as some lettuce and sweet marjoram. And most of those will be ready within a relatively short amount of time. We also have a return of the grow bag, which you can either plant upright, or you can fill most of the way, seal the end, and then plant it like a window box that just happens to be indoors if you want, or outdoors. And of course, we have our usual handy dandy instruction guide, book list for adults, and book list for kids, which by class time will include a coloring page on the back. We do have space for more people to sign up for kits if they are interested. And pickup begins on Saturday. Now, on to some of the books. We have a variety of new books, whether you want information on basic gardening, on succession planting, on growing as climate activism, to give you plant and wildlife haven. You have your indoor tongue-in-cheek plants are my favorite people, which gives you a little bit of information as well as how to, and 4-season gardening. Now this is just a sample of what we have. We have a lot more books, which some of them are currently checked out, and we are getting more on a regular basis. We will have, as last time, a guide which will be emailed out. As you can see, we've added, whoops, I forgot to share the screen, pardon me. So here we go. We've added a few more sections, but I have more books than are on the list. I've got on the cart here to show you as well. Some of them from the list and some ones that didn't make it because I was trying to make the list that gets emailed a little more manageable. So you've got your basic information on growing under lights if you just want to grow indoors. We have DVDs on food gardening and other such things. We've got seed starting, plant parenting, for those that want to work on propagating. This goes beyond just starting from seed. A little bit on saving seeds as well. We've got our section on compost and soil. And we have quite a lot of books on the topic, whether you want something that really gets into the nitty-gritty of information on what eats and lives in your compost, or if you just want something that works on how to do it on a really small scale when you don't have a lot of space and you're busy. And if you want me to bring up anything, just note in the chat and I will give you a closer look at it. There's a lot of information out there now about what's going on in the soil, where you can get into, the beneficial bacteria and fungi that are already living there, or that you can add to your garden to make the soil work a little bit better for your plants. If you want to just dive straight into things, we've got a whole section for that as well. Whether it's herb gardening, edible gardening, you have a wide range of options. There are a number of books that focus specifically on growing in very small spaces. Example being this one, Grow All You Can Eat in 3 square feet. For those that want to just go for the flowers, we have books on that too. This is just one of the many options that are out there, and I'll show you a few more in a moment. You can see there are many options on our shelves. This is not even all of them. Regardless of whether you want to grow in a small space or grow something new. You can also get into, some of the planning aspects of things, attracting those beneficial bugs that'll help control your aphid population and other such bugs that you don't really want too many of. There's, of course, dealing with the deer, which have a knack for getting just about everywhere when they want to. If you want to plan ahead, there's a number of books on gardening all year round. There's also books where you can focus on planning to garden during drought, which we might see again, we might not this year. we'll just find out when we get there. If you are one of the few houses in Rolling Meadows that have a greenhouse, or if you have plans to put one up, we do have some books on that. And yes, there are houses in Rolling Meadows that do have greenhouses attached. Not very many, but there are some. One of them even was featured in a Daily Herald article a while back that talked about being the very first one approved in Rolling Meadows. So you could look that up if you want. There's, of course, pruning, which we're mostly past where you do your spring pruning, but there are some others, depending on what you're growing. Some of them you'll prune after they bloom. Some of them you'll wait until the fall. Books like this will go into all the details and help you prune while keeping it alive. Some things need to be pruned a lot more vigorously than others. Of course, there's always squirrels, as well as rabbits. So there's guides on dealing with that. I don't think anyone has yet attempted to put in a rooftop garden or green roof, but we do have books on that as well. And we do have one or two that go into growing during the winter, although those do use hoop houses. I'm not entirely sure what hoops you would have to jump through to get that through the permit process, but I'm sure City Hall can tell you. There are still bulbs to be found, as well as those that get planted in the spring, which there are some that will then bloom in the fall. You can also, if you so choose, get into the background of finding some of these fancy bulbs. This particular one, called Buried Treasures, is from a horticulturalist who dedicated his life to growing and finding bulbs from all over Europe and Asia. You can also force bulbs inside or in containers. There's a variety of different processes for that, which are laid out very nicely in Bulb Forcing for Beginners and the Seriously Smitten. The author has considerable background to speak to it. He competed for a number of years very successfully in some of the large garden shows. So he did multi-layered, dedicated, far past what most of us would consider doing, but he has the advice on how to do it and how to make it look great when it comes up, assuming that everything goes right. And he does his best to troubleshoot as well. And of course, as you've already seen popping up all around our neighborhoods, we've got our spring bulbs bursting into bloom, which some of your neighbors have thoughtfully planted outdoors so you can enjoy on your walk. And others have their own little garden patio or containers of joy to enjoy in their own peace and quiet. You might not know it, but you can regrow a number of different vegetables and fruits as from the pits or the scraps that you might find or leave around. That is on the other side of my cart. So for example, this one, if I can get it to show up correctly. There we go. So as you can see, this one goes into some detail on just the fact of the different things that you can regrow. Now, this is just a sample of what's out there. But for example, you can grow ginger quite successfully in our summer heat as long as you keep it warm or keep it watered. You can also, if you want, grow Jerusalem artichokes, which are also known as sunchokes. They get very tall. You know, you're talking about a sunflower relative, so you're still looking at least 4 to 6 feet minimum. But you can plant 1 or 2, and when you get to harvest time, you will find they have multiplied quite extensively in some cases. They have been used as a food source and are native to North America for many, many, many years. And they're usually cleaned and scrubbed. And then you have your choice. You can peel them and chop them up, toss them with a little oil and salt and roast them like you would a potato. You can boil and puree them. They taste a bit like artichoke in that they do have that sweet flavor. You can also find them in the grocery store if you prefer to do it without all the work. If you have a lot of patience, you can regrow pineapple and mango. Obviously, those require a lot more warmth and a lot more care and can't be left outside when it starts getting too cold. But scallions, for example, you cut off that root end that you usually trim anyway, you can regrow it just by sticking some toothpicks in and putting it in a glass of water so that they've got the green part held up above the water and roots in the water. And give it some time and it will grow those roots down, and you can leave it as is, or you can plant it in some soil and get an entirely new stock of green onions, whatever you like. And they're pretty quick about it too. Sweet potatoes, you will find used as both ornamental plants as well as food. You can easily do a container or garden plot where you grow some, or either that you dry and cut, or that you get from the garden supply place. They can be quite fancy. They come in all sorts of different colors for the leaves. And like the Jerusalem artichokes, they will multiply. Be warned that some of them get very, very large. If you've gone to the farmers markets in the area that have some of the varieties of sweet potato that get larger, you will see that some of them are so big that it's not even the whole potato. They've just got pieces that are broken up because it got so big. So like some of the other options out there, you might want to do a little research before you choose which ones to plant. This one is called Vegetables Love Flowers. And we have a number of different books that will give you the option to interplant a variety of different things and get a lot of different enjoyment out of things, as well as having practicality. So for example, here you can see they've got, it looks like calendula and kale planted together. You can see you've got the different leaf textures, you've got the different blooms, you've got a lot of different colors going on. And that's one of the fun things about both what we've got with the kit and with our books. You know, you don't have to restrict yourself to just one thing. You can grow whatever makes you happy. With our kits, I've tried to make sure that everything that goes in is something that when it grows, it's edible. I do have some warnings in there about some of the plants, because there are plants that people can eat just fine that are not safe for your pets. So just so you're aware. Now, if you really want to get into small scale stuff, you can grow into terrarium. And these can either be open or closed systems where you have plants that will thrive. In the closed systems, they're often designed where you put the water in and you put your plants in, and then you close it up, and the system will on its own, through the process of evaporation, have its own cycle going on of watering, because as the water evaporates, it'll gather on the top. And then once enough of it gathers on the top, it'll fall back down like rain or dew. And as long as your soil's still good, your plants will be generally fine as well, as long as you've got the right amount, which is why there's books on it. Now, if you just want to do container gardening, there are tons of options out there. Some of them will look into the actual building and construction of containers, like this book. Others will focus more on, you know, different options of containers you can use, things you can grow in them. This one is grow your own in pots. We even have an encyclopedia dedicated just to container plants. And this one, as you can see, includes a lot of different options. You've got your flowers, you've got your vegetables, you've got your ferns. It even goes into shrubs that are small enough to grow in containers. There's even options, for example, where you can use edible plants and create your own dramatic and varied garden or landscape. Or there's some people who really go all out and go for an edible front yard, so that they don't have to mow. Mind you, have trade-offs, like you've got to do a lot of weeding unless you've got it thoroughly planted. But, you know, there's a lot of choices out there if you choose to go that route. And you might be surprised what you can grow in a relatively small space. There's some fruit trees that can get to be quite tiny. You can see that this one here is actually shorter than the other. You know, the trick that they use is a drastic pruning at the start to keep it small and to encourage it to branch out more from a low base rather than growing tall. You could also, if you want, focus on growing vertically. You might not know it, but you can grow, for example, squash up a trellis to try and counteract the fact that it will otherwise try to take over the entire garden. There's also the fact that there are perennial vegetables as well as the annual vegetables. Most plants that you think of as garden plants and vegetables are annuals. They just grow for 1 year, maybe 2. But there are plants that will come back again and again, so that you can just plant them, make sure you take care of them, and leave them there to give you some visual interest. We also have, if you prefer to have some fun with fungi, you've got mushroom growing. You have information on growing salad leaves for all seasons, which you can do indoors or out. We have books on growing your own tea, although this does extend to herbal infusions. So you might not be able to successfully grow a tea bush in your backyard, although you are certainly welcome to try. Just like everything else, check your information. But you can also try your hand at, a number of different options that are already out there, whether they're native or not. There's sage, there's marjoram and parsley, which, try anything you want. There's different types of mint, there's lemon balm, many choices out there. You, of course, have lots of different herbal varieties to try, which you can either grow for garnish or you can grow to use for your cooking. There's also another encyclopedia here of hardy plants if you want to focus on one that will make it through winters as well as hopefully our summers. Although it may be a little harder to find things if things keep coming back and forth quite so vigorously. We do have some fun books like this one, where it really goes into a lot of different garden options if you just want flowers, so that you can cut them and bring them in and enjoy them. And it doesn't have to be a lot of flowers. We have books that will focus whether it's flowers or vegetables or just general how to right size it for any size space. If you want to just focus on the window boxes, we have books that dedicate themselves to just that. And you can get quite dramatic with those. Whether you want to go for the finicky or whether you want to go for something that is almost no care at all. Another thing that you might not have run into or might, there's also self-watering containers. You can either buy these or make them yourselves. This book will cover both options. This particular one gives a diagram here on the back. So as you can see, the way it works is you've got a reservoir where you can have the water, and you will either put that in through a hole on the side, into a segment, or some other way, depending on how it's constructed. And then the water stays there, give your roots something to grow down to and slurp up when it's thirsty. One way to have a little bit less watering to do. Now, this one is fun just because it goes into some plant partnership. So for example, some plants do better jobs at different things. This one goes into things like some that will loosen up the soil, but you've got the clay soil that most of us have in the area. Others that will help you combat weeds or different diseases. Some that will let you give the pests something to eat other than the ones that you want to eat. Some that will help you attract the beneficial insects, as well as things that will help you get better pollination, which will let you have more fruits, more peas, more strawberries, all that good stuff. One thing I do want to highlight is you can garden at any stage of life, any way that's comfortable for you, whether that's in containers, whether that's in raised beds. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be lots of work. If you want a low work garden that may require some work, we've got things like this for one garden. We have books on the so-called no work garden. We've got books on easy to grow native plants. You have so many choices out there with what you want to grow, what's right for you and your needs, and what you want out of a garden. If you want to really get into really redoing stuff, we have books that will go into that as well. And if you just want to get something that lets you look into garden design and just enjoy a lot of pictures, we've got plenty of books on that too. You don't have to get your hands dirty to enjoy it. Now, if you really want to get into having fun with things, we have things like this one, the Farmer's Approach. And this one lets you build miniature adventures. Now, whether you want to have your own little hobbit house garden or your little fairy garden, or just have something fun to run your trains through, like they have at the Botanic Gardens, you have so many options. You can also work on irrigating your garden if you want. There's sprinklers and drip systems. Hands-on, you've got your vegetable gardener building projects, which is just one of many. This one has compost bin, for example, a solar dryer, which I imagine, depending on how you construct it, could also have a cold frame. You've got the porch swing. There's lots and lots of options, no matter how you want to approach this. You do have a wide variety of books that focus on simply growing in the Midwest, even down to the month-by-month guides and the state focused. You can also find more information through the Illinois Extension System. Every land grant university was given land by the people, and in exchange, they are expected to help educate as part of their mission, both freely and the standard degree. So the extension service is that free section of things, and that will get you information on horticulture, information on preserving your harvest, information on all sorts of different things. There is a horticultural branch, which gives us things like the master gardeners. You may have noticed that there have been advertisements for the Northwest Suburban Master Gardeners Helpline running in the Daily Herald. And the Master Gardeners, once they get their certification, part of their expectation is that they do educate as part of their mission every year. So that's another way of getting people who really know what they're talking about to share. How do you do things? What can you do better? So that you've got the expertise as well as just the joy of talking about something that you know the other person really loves. Another encyclopedia here, we have native plants in the Midwest. There are a lot of plants which you may or may not think of when you're looking at gardening. Some of them work really well. Some of them will try to take over the garden. It just depends what you want. For example, on the back here, you can see they've planted a variety of coneflowers. There's, let's see, looks like maybe some sunflowers in the back, some liatros, a lot of different options. You've got different heights, different colors, and the advantage of planting the native ones is you don't have to baby them as much. Now, if you want to focus on dealing with things when it's really dry, this one focuses on dry summers and wet winters. It is focused a little more on the West Coast than out here, but it can certainly give you some ideas. And we do have a number of benefits on gardening, you know, with drought tolerance. Or simply saving some of the water that you might have to use otherwise. If you want just a general weather resilient gardening information, we have that as well. It uses a combination of native plants and other hardy options. If you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty, we have a lot of books on how to design and choose plants, how to plan out your garden so that it gives you what you want from it. You know, you've got a lot of different choices, a lot of different philosophies and what might work. You can go for the prairie style. Apologize for the glare here. Some more native options here that are local to the Midwest. And you've got a wide variety of choices if you want to go with that. You can also look at different options for ground cover, especially if you have yards that tends to be a little more on the wet side. There's native ferns, mosses, and grasses. Also have other options like this one here. You've got lots of different choices that you can use. Or if you want to stick with the classic, we have a guide for Illinois lawns in particular. You may or may not be aware, but some plants have a tendency to grow so vigorously and that they are considered invasive because they are crowding out or overgrowing the space where we might otherwise have native plants. So for example, here on the back, you have purple goosestripe, which is a common weed. And some options here, there's a native prairie plant called hay feather and another one called fireweed. You get the same sort of colors, but it does a better job of feeding our native insects, and at least in theory, is less likely to take over your neighbor's yard. Although, do your research.
15 minutes. Please bring all items to be checked out to the circulation desk at this time. Computers will shut down in 5 minutes.
Pardon me. We've got the answer books. You have the Anxious Gardener's Book of Answers. What's wrong with my vegetable garden? Essential garden maintenance workbook if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of how to take care of everything. Have encyclopedia that's just on the weeds of the Midwestern United States and Central Canada. But you can get in there and find out what's been growing that you don't want. And if you really want to just kick back with a book and enjoy, we've got things like Lessons from Great Gardeners, where you can get into some of the information that you have from all over different places, whether you're looking at the fellow who did the topiary at Versailles Palace, whether you're looking at Thomas Jefferson's gardening advice, all sorts of different information. We've got a short history of gardens if you want to just delve into how we got here. We have that one. We have Unearthing the Secret Garden if you want to get into Frances Hodgson Burnett's actual gardens and how they inspired her and shaped the gardens in the secret garden. And if you really want to dive into history, we've got things like 7 flowers and how they shaped our world, and the compendium of amazing gardening innovations. And I'm afraid that it's time for us to wrap up, but thank you so much for having joined me. I hope you'll find something on our shelves to enjoy and to learn from. Good night.